We're good? You all right there, buddy? All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I know we've had a lot of sessions in place already, and I was a little bit, I wouldn't say sleepy, but I was getting there. And it happens to the best of us, hearing so many sessions. I request that just pay some attention, because I've heard that you guys would want more advice on how to tackle go-to-market strategies. And this is really something that I've been working for over the last couple of years and passionate about this topic. So you'll probably take a bigger thing or two that you can really apply starting next week, because not tomorrow. Tomorrow is a Saturday. Deserve a well-deserved break after this, and enjoy. All right. Have you been in a situation where your product team is shipping amazing products and features, but they're going unnoticed? Quite a few people. I was in this situation when I joined UpGuard over 2 years back. We did a basic launch event, hoping people would show up. And to my surprise, more than 100 people showed up. And I thought, wow, this really works. People do want to learn about our products and the latest updates. And we thought, and when I say we, me and my leadership team, why don't we create a repeatable process around this? And ever since, we've been doing a quarterly launch event consistently for the last 2 years without fail, and the results are amazing. Over time, doing this through experimentation and feedback, I have built a repeatable process that forms a major part of our go-to-market strategy today. So today, I'm going to be talking about building a repeatable product launch motion. It's mostly about B2B SaaS, but I think a lot of it can be applied to B2C as well. Now, my name is Harsh Pudolia. I'm leading the product marketing team at UpGuard. If you don't know about UpGuard, again, another cybersecurity after the previous presentation. We work in the cybersecurity space. Our products help organizations manage cyber risk by detecting security exposures for security exposures in their attack surface and third-party vendors. And a little bit about me. Like many product marketing careers here, my career hasn't been linear either. My academic background is in electronics engineering and operations management. I worked in supply chain and operations for a few years. It was really around 5 years ago. It was exactly 5 years ago. It was this week, 5 years ago, when I moved into tech with a ride-sharing company called Ola. And if you haven't guessed already, I'm from India. So I started in their Bangalore office. And I started as a growth program manager over there. Managed multiple programs to increase user growth and revenue growth. It was in 2019 that I moved to Australia for the launch and expansion into the ANZ market. And over the next year, we launched a lot of products, expanded into new cities. It was really during this time that I learned a lot about go-to-market strategies. In 2020, unfortunately, the pandemic happened, and the mobility industry came to a standstill. And I moved from B2C to B2B. And after joining UpGuard, I've used everything I've learned in my career up to this point about operations excellence, program management, and go-to-market strategies to build a really solid product marketing function at UpGuard. We are now a 3-people strong team at UpGuard, and I'm really happy to be working with those guys. One of them is there in the audience right now, Annie. And so over the next 25 minutes, I'm going to be talking about 5 things. Why do you need product launches? How do you build a product launch event? How do you engage with your customers so they share their experiences? How do you enable sales in the process? And last but not the least, how do you measure the success of your launch events? So let's dive in. Why do you need product launches? Now, Apple does them really well. Yes, That is one reason you could get inspired and start doing one. But I don't think that's the reason why you would do a product launch event. Let's look at another relatable reason. According to Product Marketing Alliance's State of Product Marketing report, more than 80% of product marketeers have managing product launches as their third top priority or responsibility. Now, that's a good reason for you to be doing product launch events. But again, that's not reason enough why you or your organization should be investing in this. Before we look into the reasons, let's look at some common GTM challenges. Your product team is thinking, how do we showcase new products and features to our users? How do we best educate them to make maximum use out of these features? Your marketing team is thinking, how to use product content to improve funnel conversions, how to build a sense of community around the features, products. And your sales team wants to know how to use latest features to engage prospective customers and how to communicate the value of latest features. My answer is, launch events solve most of these common GTM challenges. Your product team can build trust with your users by announcing latest products and showcasing what's in the roadmap. They can improve adoption by doing feature demos to deliver and exactly show how these new features work. Your marketing team can nurture leads using the promo event campaigns and invite people to connect with their industry peers. And your sales team can re-engage these prospective customers using event invites and influence deals by showing the value of all these new features. So you're not just selling the feature now, the product as it looks right now, but how it will look in the future as well. Now that we have a few good reasons that we should be doing launch events, let's look at how to build a quarterly product launch event. When you start building quarterly product launch event, there are common practical questions that might come to mind, like why quarterly? Why not monthly or annually? I think Bree talked about this yesterday at the session on customer marketing, that they plan to do these events biannually now, which works as well. We'll answer this, why quarterly, why not monthly or annually? When in the quarter, beginning, middle, or the end? In-person or virtual events? Live or pre-recorded content? Let's answer these questions. I find quarterly is a good balance because you have enough major product improvements to showcase. If you were to do this once a month, you probably don't have enough things to showcase, and the frequency is too much. If you do this once a year, you probably have a laundry list of features that you want to showcase. It gets very difficult to prioritize, and people have already forgotten what you've released in the previous year. This enables your businesses to meet their revenue goals, as most businesses operate on quarterly cycles. And the last, probably my favorite and not the least, you do not want to overwhelm your audience or the organizers. We've all been in that spot where we've had too many webinars over the last couple of years. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Do it in a sustainable way. When looking at when in the quarter, let's look at a couple of scenarios. If you do it in month one, if your business is anything like mine, you probably have quarterly business reviews, you have sales kickoffs, maybe a board meeting even. And since this is a highly cross-functional effort, you want all hands on deck on this one. What about month three? Well, in month three, your customer success and sales teams are busy closing deals, and distracting them from doing that is a cardinal sin. So that's why aim for a mid-quarter event for maximum impact and minimum disruption. By doing this, you're enabling your marketing and sales teams to nurture leads and prospects in the first half of the quarter so they can close deals using the new launch content in the second half of the quarter. When deciding between virtual events and in-person events, I'd say start with virtual events because they have better reach, they're cost-effective, less logistically challenging, ask our organizers, and they can be done a few times a year. In-person events are great for connection. There's nothing quite like this. The food and drinks are a bonus. But it's really hard to put these kind of events every few months together. And there's some sense of reliability with virtual events, and you can do them at a higher frequency. When deciding between pre-recorded content or live content, start with pre-recorded and then add live. Because you have more control on the output. You can put scripts together, see what the final output is looking like, do a few permutations and combinations. Less things can go wrong. We've all seen demos go wrong. Live demos don't exactly work the way we want them to be. It's easy for the speakers. I don't know if you heard about this tiny gadget called teleprompter. And it's very famous in the news industry. Probably Josh from News Corp knows about this. You just put it in front of the camera, speak into it. No, don't have to worry about memorizing scripts or anything. You haven't tried it. You should try it. You'll be happy that you got to use this tech. The final output of these videos is an amazing video quality that you can repurpose on your website, on your socials, and different places. Live content is definitely more engaging. And we found that the first one we did was like complete pre-recorded. And then people asked, like, can we have some real users talking to us rather than just your product teams introducing demos and everything? And then we brought some live fireside chats and panel discussions into the mix. And it has really upped the game. So start with pre-recorded, then add live. Now that we have some of these questions out of the way, I want to really talk about something important. But before that, I just want to make sure we are all still here, not our physical bodies. All right. I'll take a very, very short 30-second break to do a quick exercise. Can everybody just sit straight and close their eyes? Put your arms on your laps, your palms facing down, and just take a deep breath. Stretch if you want to. Take a couple of breaths with your palms facing down. Now turn your palms facing upwards. And now take a couple of breaths. Deep breath in, deep breath out. You can open your eyes. Everyone feels better? Hopefully. All right, I need you to do this because I'm going to go one level deep now. And this is really important that you pay attention to this slide. A 13-week repeatable launch motion is what you need to be able to build a reliable process around this. Now, why 13 weeks? Some people have probably already done the math, but you've got 52 weeks in a year. And if you want to do 4 quarterly launch events, you need to repeat them at a 13-week cadence. Now, let's look at this example on the screen. Let's say you wanted to do a launch event in Q4. Based on what we've just discussed, you probably want to do it in the middle of the quarter, which is November. I'm calling it month 11 and week 13. To be able to do that, you will have to work backwards on a whole heap of things to make it happen. The first step is the planning. This is where you get with your product teams together and classify what are the products and features that are worth launching at this event. So we generally use a categorization called rocks, pebbles, and sand. Rocks are anything major that will influence your new customer acquisition or revenue growth. Pebbles are mostly the things that are highly requested from your existing customers, so you need to give them that. It impacts retention. And sand is anything, just bug fixes or minor improvements that we really don't want to market. So you do that in the planning phase with your PM teams and figure out, like, does it realistically look possible to launch this in the next 3 months? Yes, and you start working on the demo scripts and a lot of things that makes up to the event. And then you work with the customer success teams and identify the speakers that are closely, who utilize the features, these features and the adjacent features so that they can speak about this at your event, and we'll cover that later in the presentation. And then you want to work with your creative and design team on producing the content, and then finally the promotion bit, the piece that I don't need to teach this group of people about. You need to probably involve your sales teams, success teams because they manage the relationship with a lot of prospects and customers to help them and invite them to your event. And then it's showtime, it's event week. Great job. Rest and repeat. That's how this 13-week launch motion works. This brings me to the third part of my presentation, which is how to engage your customers to share their product experience. A few people have talked about this before, and it is really important that your product story is not just told by yourself. That's one level of storytelling. But the real storytelling is if your customers tell your story for you. So we heard a lot about advocacy today and yesterday. If you have users, if you have advocates that know your product, utilize it well, and want to talk about it, now is the time to get your speakers to speak at your launch event. To do this, you'll have to work with your customer success team to identify customers who are willing to do this. We generally found a good practice around this. We usually identify customers in different regions. This time, we are doing a Europe-focused event. Last quarter, we had folks speak from US, and the one before had people speaking from a different place. So it puts less pressure on the respective regional teams, and you have a global representation of businesses that you're working with. Show these speakers value in speaking at your event. I think, was it Brent? He covered this pretty good. What is the value? Like, there is a lot of value that these events bring to them as well. But I generally find it's a sense of giving back to the community that brings them to these events, and they want to share the things that have worked for them with their industry peers. Set up a speaker briefing. Talk to them about to understand what they are comfortable speaking, and what are the event technology platform that you're using so they're comfortable and don't have any surprises on the event day. Put all of these in an outline, share it with the speakers so they know what questions they're answering, what are the things that they'll be talking about. It's not a script, but it's always good to have a reference. Rehearsals are optional. I've never done one, and it's been fine. We've done 10 of these now, so you should be good there. And this brings me to the fourth part of my presentation, how to enable sales in the process. As a product marketer, you can never ignore sales. Enabling sales can be done easily for this process by creating an event promotion kit. That's what I like to call it. It's essentially a document containing all of the event details, the speakers, the features being launched, some templates for email and social that they could easily copy and paste and use in different places. We all mutually agreed that we'll burn battle cards. So we don't do battle cards already. We do something called messaging briefs. And these messaging briefs are for each of the big feature that we launch. We put a one-pager together, which is like, what is the value proposition of this feature? What are some of the key benefits? And what are the competitive advantages of this feature? It makes it really easy for the sales team to just absorb the information and talk to prospects about it. Share product demos with your internal customer-facing teams if it's ready a week or two before advance, because knowing and reading about the content is one thing, but seeing things in action and having a touch and feel of how the feature actually looks. I say feel, it's not a physical product, it's a software product, but you get the point. Work with sales enablement to revisit sales pitches if the product or the feature is big enough that it deserves a revision of your sales deck. Work with your sales development team on outreach campaigns for registrants and attendees. These are people who have shown interest in your product content, and these are likely very warm leads. All right, great work. Event week, showtime. There are a few things you want to focus on the event week, chat moderation being one of them. Speaker moderation, you probably want another person to focus on this. Couple of things to focus is have some canned responses ready to keep the engagement going, and let people introduce each other. And if you have multiple stages set up in the virtual event platform, guide people, because I've seen quite a drop-off when people move from one segment to other. It's always a good practice to guide them through the event. Event feedback, that's how your event improves. We've received a lot of feedback and have been able to improve that, use that to improve the event. Event debrief, this is very important piece, and we look at some of the success metrics that you could include as a part of your debrief. I don't need to mention this, it's a lot of work, so take a well-deserved day or two off once you've done the show. All right, you've done a great work, you've done the planning with your PM team, you worked with your success team to identify customers, you put a great event together, you've done the promotions. How do you say that your event was successful or not? I generally use a few metrics to measure, to understand that if it's worth to keep doing something like this, and you might want to evaluate this for your business. So let's look into some of the things that you want to ask. Are your registrants and attendees growing? Now, these charts are real, but I had to remove the data labels because I didn't want to go through the process of approvals. But if you look at the graphs, over the last 3 quarters, our events have been growing in terms of attendees, registrations, and attendance rate. And those are good signs that you're headed in the right direction, and it's worth to keep doing. People are still finding value in it, and more people are showing up. What's the mix of customers, prospects, and leads attending the event? Now, when we started doing these events, it was focused towards customers, mostly about product updates and roadmap. So that's why that giant pillar of customers over there. I don't know if you can see the font in the bottom. But over time, as we added more user-focused content and best practices, we saw a lot of leads, MQLs, and prospects coming to these events as well. So depending on what audience you're targeting, what stage of the funnel you're targeting, you can shape the content accordingly. Did the event influence your win rates? Now, this is an interesting question that I recently asked myself. How does this event influence win rates? So I went into our revenue intelligence platform called Gong. I don't know if you guys use it or have heard about it. Any Gong users here? Yeah. So did a basic search took a subset of our deals and ran a search. Our launch events are called UpGuard Summit. And just check if UpGuard Summit is mentioned as a part of the deal conversation, what is the win rate versus when it is not mentioned? And you can see the results. It's approximately an 11% higher win rate when the launch events are mentioned. And I went into these calls to listen more about it, like why is this happening? And what I realized is people are not just buying the product, they're buying the experience that your company has to offer. And these conversations are anchored about not what the product looks like today, but how the product's going to look like in 3 months, in a year's time. Because a lot of these customers that sign up with us do annual contracts, and they want to know, is the product going to be the same year down the line, or is it improving continuously? If I make a feature request, will it be entertained or won't it be? That gives them a lot of confidence and is reflected in these win rates. Is your event influencing revenue? I think a few people have touched upon how the acts of advocacy or the things that you do as a PMM, how do they influence revenue? Because it's hard to measure direct revenue. It's always attributed revenue. To build this chart, I've used HubSpot's linear attribution builder. Now again, these things are more correlation than they are causation. So it's not saying that because this event happened, hence the deal converted, but it's more an influencing factor. The interesting thing to notice here is that the event does impact and influence all kinds of deals. But if you look at the bottom graph, it's really our renewal deals that are really being influenced by this particular event. And since a lot of our attendees are customers, hence it's a huge correlation with our renewal deals. And that's reason enough for us to keep doing these. And last but not the least, this is something that brings joy to me every time I read about this. What are our attendees saying about your event? I felt the content is relatable and helpful. Very valuable event, keep on doing it. Every time I read this, gives me the energy to keep going, gives our team the energy to keep going, and makes it worth. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. To summarize, I've talked about 5 things. Why do you need product launches? How to build a product launch event? How to engage your customers to speak at your product event? How to enable sales in the process? And how to measure the success of launch events. I think we've got some time for questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Harsh. All right. So yes, a couple of questions here coming in hot. Is your team balancing this launch cadence with other work, or is there someone that's dedicated to it?
That's a very good question. Like I said, it's a lot of work. It's not easy to put these events together. So when I started with UpGuard 2 years back, I was the only one working on this. And it took me a good 2 to 3 quarters to get the rhythm right. And this was the only thing I was working on for these first couple of quarters. Once you get the rhythm right, things get easy. Everyone knows their job. Product team knows what they have to do. Success knows what they have to do. It gets streamlined from there. And I was able to take on more projects. But the first couple of quarters, it takes a lot of work to get the rhythm right.
That makes sense. Like most things, hybrid is probably the most appropriate model, but it's more complicated. So what sort of tools do you use? Mention's made of GoToWebinar, but there's a bit of a struggle with executing both types, live and pre-recorded.
We use a tool called Hopin. It's probably one of the better event platforms. They have both virtual and hybrid solutions in place. And there are a bunch of them, Goldcast, Bevy, you name them. There's a lot of them. If it's about hybrid, the challenge here is if you have enough local density of customers, like let's say I wanted to put an event in Sydney as a launch event, do I have enough B2B customers in Sydney to justify an event or to put so much investment? If your business is at that scale, you could probably go for hybrid. But if it's not, just put on a virtual event. These event platforms really replicate a lot of the in-person event experiences virtually. You've got booths, you've got networking, you've got a lot of things inside the tool.
Excellent. Anything's got to be better than On24. Do you combine internal and external launches in one event, or do you separate them?
It'd be interesting to understand more about what do you mean by internal, but if that means like internal launch is like telling your sales and success teams about what are the new features coming up and telling them how they look and feel, how to communicate the value. So we generally don't do a very big internal launch, but like I said, some of the processes that we follow, the sales enablement, the communications, and if the feature is big enough, like it's going to change the entire sales pitch or the way we communicate the value of our product, there are sales enablement training sessions organized for them a good time before the external launch event, yes.
Awesome. Really hyper-specific question. How many minutes or hours of content do you produce per quarter?
I want to keep it very strict to 90 minutes. Anything beyond that, I don't think people want to stick around. Sometime it extends to like 120 minutes, which is roughly 2 hours. So anywhere in that range of 90 to 120 minutes.
Makes sense. All right. And are there any activities that worked particularly well, or some things that just did not work with respect to driving attendees and converting registrants to actually turning up?
I think one thing that I've noticed is if there is an interesting speaker, interesting customer speaker in a particular industry that we target, if they speak at the event, like in our case, it's healthcare and financial services, if they're speaking at our event, and since we know a majority of our customers sit in that particular target segment, it just lifts up the game automatically, and vice versa. And something we've noticed is when we do these replays in different regions. So when you put an event in APAC and people are speaking live, that attendance automatically goes up. When they know they're going to receive less live content, the registrations are not as much. So having some live content, whether it's a live demo, whether it's a live conversation with some of your staff members, definitely helps notch up the attendance.
I think we've covered everything. Thanks very much. Appreciate that, Harsh.
All right. I'll just leave my details here, and it's not showing up. Can you pull up this last slide, please?
Can we flick back to his presentation? Ah. He's too quick.
Yeah. Yep. So those are that's my LinkedIn profile. If you scan the QR code, it'll take you there. If you have any other questions about building a launch motion, send me a DM, send me a connect request, and we can take the conversation from there. Go smash your next launch event. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks, Harsh.